Hello, welcome everybody to this week's episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast. On this week's episode, we will be covering Season 1, Episode 5, Mafia versus Yakuza. As always, I'm your host, Matt Davis, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts,
Craig Taylor.
And
you know it. It's me, Lucas, again.
the flawless intro, baby.
Oh, yes.
And working the ones and the twos, emceeing for us, our computer whiz,
Brennan Scholar.
Yeah.
Lucas, don't take that out.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like.
leave that awkward in.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, guys. I have a lovely icebreaker to start us off today. What is your favorite mob movie / show / video game? Obviously, it can be Yakuza related as well. I'll go first, actually, so I give you guys a chance to think about it.
Don't steal mine.
My favorite movie is, my favorite Mafia movie is Goodfellas by Martin Scorsese. I know, very original, right? And then my favorite TV show is definitely got to be The Sopranos. You know what it is. The Gabagool. And whoever's editing this video, probably Craig, top right corner of the video, can we have a Gabagool counter for the amount of times I say the word Gabagool in this episode?
Yeah, sure.
What are we up to now?
3 already, I think. Luke, what's yours?
All right, mine's going to be... You can count it as a mob movie, but it is the Boondock Saints, where it's kind of they're taking out the mob members.
I didn't think of that as a mob movie, but
I mean, it's essentially...
Right,
yeah. Like...
I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the mob, but it's, the opposite end. The guys taking out the mob, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But love me some Boondock Saints and some Boondock Saints, too. I have the t-shirt.
Yeah, not to turn this into the Boondock Saints podcast, but Boondock Saints is one of, the strangest movies, because it's so hard to describe. It's like an independent film, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's this weird, superhero kind of movie. It's very difficult to describe unless you've seen it.
Yeah, I agree. And Willem Dafoe really nails his role in that. And just playing the freakiest, just playing Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe is a guy that always goes hard. And whatever role they give him, he's I'm cranking it up to 10, baby.
When we watched Antichrist, it was the most insane shit
Oh my God.
I've ever seen. I remember, I watched Boondock Saints 1 and 2 on Netflix back in the day when it was on Xbox 360, and they had the weirdest shit on there. That was when I got to watch it, and we watched that all the time.
I watch it every St. Patrick's Day. And Matt can attest to that because I made him watch it with me.
Yeah,
on
we
St.
watched
Patrick's
it this
Day.
past St. Patrick's
And you
Day.
did not pay attention to a second of the movie.
I'd seen it before, so I know what happened.
All right, let's move on.
Back to, I guess, Craig, what's yours? What is yours?
Yeah, so obviously, you know me, I'm a gamer. Okay, I don't watch any of these movies. I don't know what movies are. I'll stick with video games because I can't think of a lot of mob movies that stand out to me. I would say in terms of mob, you can kind of call this a mob game, but GTA 4 I think is such a great crime story, organized crime story.
Nico Bellic.
Yeah, I would love to one day just go back and play that because there's so much there, and it says so much, just in the writing and stuff. So I really love that game. On the Yakuza side, I've been dipping my toes in the Yakuza series.
You want to talk about weird? I've never played Yakuza, and everything I've seen of it, that game is crazy.
I watched the other day, one of my favorite streamers, Ray Narvaez, he was streaming, I don't know which one it was, but in the game, he was in a public place on the internet in the game, looking up an adult cam site, but it was part of the game. You got achievements and points for watching cam girls.
The localization of those
if only,
games,
am I right, boys?
Yeah, the localization is perfect. There are a few games that are like that are Japanese made, and it's just hilarious. You guys would love those games, but I played 7. 7 was my first introduction, Like a Dragon, and that game's awesome. They're all on Game Pass now, pretty much. So if you have that, you could play them. But I've only played that and then the first remake, and I'm working on 0 right now. But just want to give a quick shout out to probably the only Yakuza games that exist.
Shout out to cousin, what was his name from GTA 4? Always wanting to go bowling.
Oh my God.
Our cousin
At the worst
Roman.
times.
Roman, yeah. I'm going to go bowling with you, Roman.
You're going out on a date or you're about to like rob a bank and Roman is calling you up like, Nico, you want to go bowling?
You're like in a shootout with the cops, like in a helicopter. Want to go bowling, cousin.
You get that sassy voicemail he leaves you. You're in a car, you're running from the cops in a car chase and he's like, oh, why you never pick up?
Yeah. I love GTA 5. I think it's like an awesome, like super long form action movie. 4's story is super personal, and I think like a lot of like the I don't know what you call it, infamy that GTA has gets lost like within GTA 4, where you forget how well it's written and stuff like that. So
okay. Well, to get into the episode, I want to say this is the first episode where we are featuring a final battle that is 5 versus 5 rather than 1 versus 1. So I had a couple things to say about this. Number one, Max Geiger, he claims it at like toward the end of the episode. He says that the sim, which we all know is the big lingering question of the show, is the sim real or not? It's up to the audience to decide. But Max claims that the sim was originally designed to test army versus army. And I remember we all looked at each other on the couch like, what? Already that makes it kind of interesting because it's like it's boiling down to a 1 versus 1. But second thing I wanted to note is that a 5 versus 5 messes up the math of the show a little bit.
It messes up everything.
Yeah, because they measure the final results by recording how many kills a particular weapon gets out of 1,000 battles, right? So like if a weapon gets 40 kills, right, then you can assume that 40 battles out of 1,000 ended with a warrior getting a kill with that respective weapon. Now, however, we must assume there's less than 1,000 battles, even though they keep saying 1,000 battles, because there's going to be multiple kills per battle if it's 5-on-5, right? And you're going to have like these awkward survivors each round, right? Because to determine who won, at least one Mafia or one Yakuza guy has to live. So
you could have 5 people live, one, all of them die on the other side, and it could be uneven.
Yeah, theoretically, if it's 5-on-5, you could take a grenade, right? Throw it, kill all 5 of the other team. I guess we just don't know what the landscape looks like inside the sim. That kind of stuff is really irrelevant when you think of these ancient warriors. A Spartan and a ninja closing the distance. Are they in a field? Are they in a desert? I guess it doesn't really matter because, I don't know, they'll start out from like 200 yards, shoot their bows and their javelins or whatever, and then close the distance, stab each other with spears, and then close the distance even more with swords. And at whatever range you die, that racks up a kill. But in this 5 versus 5, it's like, especially with firearms, what distance are they starting from? This becomes more of an issue in the next episode, so I'm not going to get into it. But in this one, like these SMGs theoretically have a range that is like vastly outreaches something like a baseball bat. So what range are they starting this from? And how much ammo do you have? Because theoretically, you could sit in cover with a Tommy gun and just keep shooting until you run dry, right? You're not going to be... There's at no point are you going to have ammo left in the Thompson and then be like, all right, he's closing the distance. Let me pull out my bat.
Let me get my ice pick out.
I have 2 things to say on this front. One, Max saying that this sim is designed for armies is immediately contradicted when, after the Tommy gun test, this is a dumb statement in and of itself, but Max says, I'm going to have to write something in that says multiple chances of lethal strike per turn.
Yeah.
Which is like, duh. Like in the army versus army, if that's what the original sim was, were they lining up 1v1 like an Oklahoma drill, like trying to kill each other?
Is it a turn-based thing also?
Yes.
Then? Yeah. So that's my question.
I wanted to say that because the way Max phrases that, he says multiple shots, multiple chances to hit per turn. Oh, so it is like, if the sim is real, if this isn't all just fake, the sim is like a turn-based
D&D game.
D&D game, which is kind of partially the, I'm a sim truther. I'm a slave to it. You can blame me. But I always kind of thought the sim was just a rudimentary sort of thing. I didn't realize it was just like a D&D sim, though.
Yeah. Although, you know what? Maybe their justification of the one weapon, one kill is whatever the final kill is, because that's
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, because that's kind of how the ancient warriors are, if you think about it. Because a Spartan can do damage from long range, but not get the kill until the ninja is really close.
Yes.
So maybe their mentality is almost like 5 giant people. Like,
you know what? You know what, Craig? That makes sense in 1v1 to do it that way. It makes no sense, though, to do it in 5. If you have the Thompson, like in this episode, and you kill 4 people with the Thompson, and then the last guy gets killed with the ice pick. Give the kill to the ice pick?
Let me
it's
tell
so
you,
weird.
You're playing Call of Duty, and you get 1 life, and it's that 5v5, and then you get 4 kills. That last guy gets some kill. He gets his throwing knife kill. That's the final kill cam. All of that is the tally of the final kill cam.
Sure. So I want to get into the Warriors a little bit. I'm going to start with Yakuza here. They give the stats as Yakuza, the year is 1947, so they're really going for a post-World War II Yakuza. 5'6", 150 pounds, so I guess Japanese guys in Deadliest Warrior's mind have gotten a little bigger since the samurai. They're wearing no armor. Yes. Gear is 10 pounds, which that stuck out to me because both the Mafia and the Yakuza are given 10 pounds as their gear weight. The British Sten by itself weighs 7 pounds. The Thompson by itself weighs almost over 10 pounds. So that's not accurate. I don't know how that's measured. Who's carrying what?
Even this replica I have here weighs feel how heavy this thing is.
Yeah. So the Thompson notoriously is a heavy gun.
That gun also says made in China, like his last weapon.
All right, people. The real ones are expensive.
So that gear weight cannot be accurate to like everything that they're carrying. I guess they just made that number up. The experts for the Yakuza, we have first and foremost Zero Kazama, who I would say Zero and Joe Ferrante are the standout experts of this episode, but Zero Kazama, he's introduced as a martial arts black belt and combat instructor. So from everything I could find about Zero, he is an actor and a stunt actor, like both, right? And he's most famously known as the host of the MTV show Silent Library. I know you millennials in the audience, I know you're going, oh. And Lucas, did you want to talk about Zero a little bit here?
I did, because I was excited for this. I was typing his name in, doing my research, just as I do. And the first thing that came up, MTV host Zero Kazama, MIA, and death threat case, warrant issued. I guess he was dodging a court appearance because of a bizarre incident where cops say he terrified tourists with death threats. I'm reading this directly offline. Let me scroll down here. According to court records obtained, Kazama had a date with a judge on March 28th for DUI and misdemeanor assault charges, but was a no-show. And then he was found later in I guess it was like a car chase or something, and he was arrested and given a DUI and another assault charge.
Nice.
So, really good expert here.
Zero. Well, personal drama aside, I really was hoping Zero was still on the lam, because I wanted a special episode of Dog the Bounty Hunter where Dog the Bounty Hunter's got to hunt down Zero Kazama and then fight him with nunchucks. To say in Zero's favor, even though he is like an actor and a stunt actor, he clearly knows some of what he's doing, because the way he handles the weapons, at least to me, keep in mind I'm not an expert at any of these, but it looks to me like he knows how to handle nunchucks and sai.
They have those shots where he's like beating up like a punching bag.
Yeah.
That have nothing to do with the test, just to make Zero look good.
Yeah, just to make him look cool.
Yeah.
He was in Jurassic World also.
Oh, there you go.
He was credited as doing stunts in there, and that was a good movie.
Yeah. Expert number 2 is David Kono. He is billed as a Yakuza descendant and a Yakuza weapons expert. Honestly, David works mostly as an actor. He's also done some work as a producer and a director and a variety of other behind-the-camera jobs. I have no idea if he's a Yakuza descendant or not. We've talked about that already on this show with the Viking Samurai episode. The bill that someone is a descendant, right?
Unverifiable.
Yeah, it's unverifiable, and it's also irrelevant. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, if David Kono is like the cousin of a guy that was in the Yakuza, sorry, that's actually Thomas Bonanno. But if David Kono's like grandpa was in the Yakuza, does that matter? Does that mean he knows about the Yakuza? You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna let it slide. David, he's an actor.
Also, I want to say something. We'll get into this more with the Yakuza and their history and stuff. Yakuza weapons expert, I don't know what that means. Like,
right.
Within context of weapons the Yakuza used, that's a meaningless phrase.
Yeah, it's very strange. We're not ready to get into the big question yet. After I read a little about the Mafia experts, then I want to get into the big question that I think you're leading into here, Craig. So, the Mafia. Mafia is given the year of 1929, so during Prohibition. Height 5'10", 170 pounds. No armor, gear of 10 pounds. Like I said, Thompson weighs 10 pounds by itself, so I don't know how that works out. But we got expert number 1 is Joe Ferrante, who's billed as an Italian-American historian and Mafia weapons expert.
Italian-American historian, a.k.a. post Italian memes on Facebook.
Yeah, right. He's just a guy who speaks in a New York accent. Joe is an actor. He's appeared in a variety of shows and movies. I found his 2017 demo reel on YouTube. You can, if you just search Joe Ferrante on YouTube, you'll see it. He is on Two Broke Girls, and he calls Kat Dennings hot, which, you know, I mean, hey. And he's in a variety of other stuff. So
Days of Our Lives.
Yep.
Jane the Virgin. I wrote down the ones I thought were funny.
He's a handsome Italian man, and he's here to give us some of the best moments of this episode. So
if you had a police lineup of every single person who was in the production of this episode and someone told you to point out Joe Ferrante, you would be able to.
That's true. He is very Italian looking.
Gabagoo.
Gabagool. Get that counter up. Expert number 2 is Thomas Bonanno. I just love saying that name. Thomas Bonanno. He's billed as a Mafia descendant and cousin of Joe Bonanno. Inspiration for The Godfather. So there are multiple inspirations for The Godfather. The main inspiration for any of you movie buffs out there, you will know that the main inspiration was actually Frank Costello. So sorry, Joe, but you're a side inspiration. And I wrote on here, I could not find anything on this guy, Thomas Bonanno.
I got something.
Okay, one second. There was a famous mobster named Joseph Bonanno, right? So he could be his cousin.
It could be him.
Right? Yeah, just in witness protection.
I'm his cousin.
Come on, man. Hey. Oh, I'm walking here. I'm his cousin. What'd you have on him, Luke?
The same sentence that you just said. I was just going to say, I was going to cover that like I scoured that Joseph was 97, and I guess he just passed away recently.
Okay.
And it ended like the Bonanno crime family, which was one of the major 5 original families.
Yeah.
And yeah, I searched, basic Google search, cousins, grandchildren, whatever. I didn't see any Thomas in there. So
Tommy might be a legitimate cousin.
They could have given him a fake name on the show too. He could have a different name.
Him and David Kono are the same person. Just like different.
Yeah.
They're shaped the same. They look the same.
Their build is the same thing too. Like
don't have a DUI and assault record.
Let's be real. Joe Ferrante probably has that.
Okay, so real quick, just a funny mention in the intro of the show. Joe makes a claim that the Yakuza don't stand a chance because they're not as recognizable an organization in America as the Mafia.
All right, if you go up to anyone in America and say, have you heard of the Mafia? They're going to say yes. Are they deadly? Yes. Are they warriors? Yes. What about the Yakuza? Who?
Just because your dumbass doesn't know who the Yakuza are doesn't mean
Right.
they're going to lose in a fight.
Yeah, like just because a Japanese gang is less known in America than the Italian mafia, like I do want to mention it is specifically the Sicilian mafia too. And I wanted to ask both of you guys just a couple questions. So for you, Luke, this show, you're the resident mafia expert on our podcast this
Loosely.
week. Right. I'm using expert in the way Deadliest Warrior uses it. The show talks about the Sicilian mafia's rise to power in New York during the Prohibition era. Luke, what is a mafia exactly? And can you tell us some quick history about the Sicilian mafia specifically?
Good thing that's what I researched.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, the mafia comes from the Italian word mafiosi, which I don't know what the direct translation is, but that's where the name comes from. Yes, the Sicilians were specifically from Sicily. What I can find, they kind of speak it's their own heritage, and Sicilian is its own language, separate from the Italian language, where it has different influences and a lot of Italian people.
If I could just interject for those who aren't geography buffs, Sicily is like the big island off of Italy. There's like Italy, Sicily, and then the littler island is Corsica, I believe. So
I think so.
Yeah. So if you're Sicilian, you're from that island, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So pretty much whenever this Sicilian people, they were kind of almost like a little bit of a lower class. I don't want to offend anyone here because I know how prideful Italian and Sicilian people are.
I think that's honestly part of their image, though. I think it's important to note that.
And all the people that were there at the time are probably dead.
But they were typically like poor people, and they were persuaded essentially to go over to America with this whole like American dream that you always hear about. They were already kind of involved in a lot of underground crime, and pretty much anything that was profitable and illegal they started doing as soon as they came over to America. You know, your prostitution, your gambling, prohibition is pretty much like the era, the picture that they painted with this episode. They chose like the 1920s prohibition era mafia. And so to join this mafia, they preferred Sicilian background, but you could just be Italian, and later you could be half Italian and they would accept you. But you had to pass a test. And no one knows exactly what the test was unless you were in the mafia, and then you can't talk about it. But supposedly you had to participate in a murder. So that you were kind of like sworn to this oath where, if you ever talked bad about them, they could put you in jail because if you put them in jail, they put you in jail, or probably death is more what would happen. And there was something called the commission when all these families started coming over, mainly in like New York, Chicago, the big cities. There was these big five crime families, and they made the commission, which required all families to make a list of their prospective members and pass it on to the other families and all the other like essentially mafias and gangs and everything, which prevented a lot of like small back and forth fighting and just kind of killing each other because they knew exactly who you were and where you were from. You know, they'd go around, they'd offer protection, alcohol, cigarettes. Made men is always what they call them. And many people were paid off essentially to help steal goods. They would pay off a lot of dock workers, and, this crate would go missing, and it would, it became the mafia's property, and they would just pay off a lot of the cops. And they actually took over the union in New York City. And
Jimmy Hoffa.
Yep.
Yeah.
They would essentially like threaten these big businesses to pay them money, or they would, because they own the union, they would have everyone go like on strike or pretty much stop working or halt everything. So they're pretty bad guys. Al Capone, ever heard of him? Big guy.
We'll be discussing Al Capone.
Yeah, I don't want to reference him too
his
much.
particular episode in season 2.
It's easy to get these episodes confused.
Right. Dude, I'm glad you mentioned that, Craig, because this whole week I had just example after example of telling people like, yeah, we're doing Mafia Yakuza this week. It happened like at least 4 times. And people would go, oh, is that the one with the stupid stiletto and Bowie knife thing? And I'm like, no, that's Jesse James Al Capone.
And don't forget Johnny Lufrado.
Yeah, and Johnny Lufrado, but we will get there when we get there.
Yeah, this episode does kind of get like overshadowed to a point, I think. But I think that episode is actually a little bit better than this one. But
I think so too. There's a couple reasons I think it gets overshadowed that we're going to cover like on the pod today. Question I had for you, Craig. Both Yakuza experts emphasize family, heritage, and like martial training. Can you tell us about some of the Yakuza's history and the validity of these statements?
Sure. So the Yakuza, contrary to, I think the Mafia might be a lot more specific than the term Yakuza, because the Yakuza were founded in the 16th century. So we're talking very long time. And I believe that you could probably use the term Yakuza to describe anybody involved in organized crime, from gambling to, various other means, probably like drug peddling. I did see some information online about the Yakuza ethical code or whatever. And I think the reality is that these are all different gangs and they're all the different codes. You'll see stuff like Yakuza would never touch drugs because, drugs would harm the people on their turf. But like there's Yakuza who sell drugs, and there's like, well, they would never harm anyone who's not a Yakuza. They only harm people who get in their way, but then they deal with human trafficking, other groups. So there's really not a singular code like some people might be led to believe. And one of the biggest questions I wanted to find out in my research was, are the Yakuza martial arts experts? And no. So, obviously there are enforcers, and if you're an enforcer, you probably know some form of martial arts, as I'm sure if you're a bouncer at a club downtown, like you probably know a little bit of like, Krav Maga or something. I don't know. But your core, this show postulates that core Yakuza members had to have been trained in some sort of martial arts. But I think that points to evidence that these are ideations of Mafia and Yakuza, not the reality. And like the real ones, it's almost like, well, they're Asian, they gotta know.
Yeah. I almost want to say, Craig, that this show has a habit of trying to connect warriors with other warriors that are on this show. Hence how you get the knights are like the, original Green Berets or something, even if it's a stretch. And I think they do a lot to try and connect the Yakuza with the samurai in this episode, saying that like almost like
evolution.
It sprouted from the samurai, and that and I noticed that description of like, well, you're born into it and you're trained from a young age is like kind of how they talked about the samurai's training. And I was just like, I don't know if that's why I was curious about it.
They do the modern day insert warrior here, the historic insert warrior here.
Yeah, I'm sure they said that about the Yakuza, like the modern samurai or something, or at least it was cut in editing.
Right.
There's a little bit of truth to the fact that, like, one idea I had about the Yakuza before going in was that they were this other pillar of society that was sort of on the edge, but you had normal citizens, the government, and the Yakuza, and it was sort of like this triad that was dependent on one another. And that's not necessarily true. Obviously, like, some people are helped by the Yakuza. There was a famous case in 2011. There was a massive earthquake in Japan, and the Yakuza actually got hundreds of trucks of supplies there before the Japanese government did. So kind of a nice gesture for people who deal in human trafficking. But yeah, so varying degrees of how helpful they are,
I saw in my research that as many illegal businesses that they own, they also own legal ones as well, like construction companies and nightclubs. They have pretty much like illegal.
Well, you need to launder money, right? So you got to have your legal businesses.
Yeah, because being a Yakuza is not illegal.
I found that too. That's crazy.
Is it illegal to just be in a gang?
I think it's outlawed in the United States. The United States government, I didn't write this down, so I don't know the exact date. They didn't even recognize the Mafia until 1963. They refused to even acknowledge their existence.
Weird. But can you go to jail on a charge that you are in a gang?
No,
Because
I don't
usually
think
it's like
so.
gang activity, obviously. It's
Yeah.
illegal.
In
but-
America, I think it depends what color your skin is, probably, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you rocking them colors, you're probably going to get in more trouble than if, you're a white guy that's in like a motorcycle gang or something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like Hell's Angels aren't like outlawed or anything.
So maybe it's not that crazy. But like reading it, I was like, oh, that's surprising.
It did too. I had that like written in bold print.
Yeah.
So that brings us to maybe the central question of this episode.
Ooh, can I throw in a cool little fun fact just because I saw
Yeah,
it?
go ahead.
The name Yakuza, I looked up where that name came from because I looked up, the Mafia came from the mafiosi. There is a card game that was really popular in Japan, and the name of the Yakuza came from that card game called Ocho Cabo. I'm probably butchering that. I'm sorry. It's like Ocho Cabo. And when you would draw the cards 8, 9, and 3, it equals Yakuza, which was the worst hand in the game and essentially translated to useless. So I guess there's like some Yakuza means like useless in a way.
Probably as people that are outcasts, like a lot of Yakuza.
I could see
in,
that.
in Yakuza movies and stuff. It's always like the hero is someone who is rejected, and he's like a delinquent, and so he feels like angst at his family or something. So
Yeah.
they're rejects, sort of.
That's a cool origin. For
I
the
wonder
name,
if I
though.
got a bad translation on that instead of like maybe it's
Yeah.
like misfit or something like that it means.
Hey,
but
if you're speak Japanese and know
If
the
you're in the
answer-
Yakuza, please call.
No, if you're in the Yakuza, just remember this is a silly show. Don't ignore anything we have to say. But if you speak Japanese, and like the translation a little better, throw it in the comments.
yeah, I like spelled it phonetically, like so
Yeah.
I could try to pronounce it, but
So I want to get to the central question of this episode, I think, for you guys. Are these two warriors? This is a show called Deadliest Warrior. Are these guys warriors? And what is your idea of a warrior? Now, none of us are experts, right? But I just want to... What separates a Mafia or a Yakuza, if your answer is no? What separates them from something like a Spartan? I don't know, do you want to take this one on first, Luke?
there I was, 3 a.m., another sleepless night with the cold sweats, pondering the question of whether the Mafia and Yakuza were warriors.
He had just cleared his browser history.
No, I did think about it a lot back, and I'm kind of like, I want someone to convince me today because I'm like back and forth on it. Because I feel like in my immediate assumption of a warrior, I mean, yeah, you picture like your military, your Spartan, you know, someone that is essentially fighting for a cause, and they have some sort of like formal training in some style of combat, whatever it may be, but they have some type of training or some type of background or something to fight for. And these guys, I just don't feel like fit the bill of warrior too much because they're just doing it for the money. Majority of like the street level guys are untrained. It doesn't seem like a warrior to me.
Craig?
I think it has to do with the why, kind of like what Lucas said. So I don't think that they're warriors because most of them aren't even trained, period. But their end is to, to commit crime, and that's kind of like their overall goal for fighting. I thought I have some fringe examples to kind of test like my definition. A UFC fighter, I would say, is a warrior because they're trained, like they're trained to fight and for sport. A football player maybe even could be considered a warrior. In fact, I would bet that a football player would be on like season 7 of Deadliest Warrior. So that I could see an argument for that because they're trained for this physical combat, if you want to call it that. A serial killer, which I think would be on season 4 of Deadliest Warrior.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer
yeah.
versus Ed Gein or something.
To the football one, I just want to say it's like Tom Brady versus Michael Jordan or something. Like who would win?
Yeah.
Football.
But that I would consider a warrior, even though they may have killed more people than Al Capone, or
Yeah.
at least directly. Like they, their nature is committing a crime, so you wouldn't describe them as a warrior. So I agree, it's a gray area, but you have to look at the why, I think.
Yeah, I guess my humble and amateur opinion is that a warrior, I guess to me, involves professional training. Like you're a professional, right? And I'm glad you mentioned MMA and football, Craig, because I was thinking those exact same sports. Like, well, what about combat sports? And I kind of came up in my mind like there's warriors who are combat athletes, and then there's warriors that are like trained fighters, I guess, or soldiers. I don't think the Yakuza and the Mafia are the only people that get put on this show that don't fit that description. But yeah, I don't think that they don't fit my definition of like what a warrior is. Because Joe Ferrante, right at the beginning of the episode, goes, I told you about that rant where he mentions no one knows who the Yakuza are. But the last question about the Mafia he asks is, who's the Mafia? Do you know them? Are they dangerous? Are they warriors? Yes. He says, are they warriors? Yes. And when he says that, I'm like, no. Like, like, and especially you can think of an enforcer in the mob, someone who is a street tough or something. Honestly, I think a lot about like this whole episode, like Tony Soprano, and I know that's a fictional character, but like just seeing these guys, they're making money doing criminal activity, and sometimes Tony Soprano has to beat somebody's ass, or pull out a gun and shoot somebody. To me, it's not on the same level of someone who's like a knight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a knight and I'm being sent on a quest. I don't see it on the same plane.
Yeah.
But,
even to test my definition even further, if you look at, I'm trying to think of other warriors that may not be warriors on the show. Pol Pot and Saddam Hussein are fighting for a cause or a country, and they've killed, I'm sure, even directly, like hundreds of people, let alone indirectly. But are they really like, oh, look at that warrior?
Yeah. I guess with those guys, you don't want to give them the credit because they suck so
Two
bad.
awful people.
Yeah.
Or George Washington and Napoleon is like, George Washington a warrior? He's obviously a little more honorable. But like it's tough. It's a gray area.
Yeah. Hey, let us know in the comments, guys. I mean, we're not the end all be all. We are the end all be all experts about Deadliest Warrior, but about what a warrior is, not so sure. I mean, let us know in the comments down below what you guys think.
Let me tell you what had me on the fence about it, and it was the Mafia essentially are like the bad guys, the criminals, and who's their natural enemy is the cops. Would you consider a police officer a warrior because they have training?
Fuck no.
Careful. We're about to ignite a serious debate here.
Well, that's because like that enters that gray area too, where the cop is essentially like a street level like enforcer but they have, whatever 8 weeks of training that they go through, where they have formal training. Would you kind of like classify that?
And
as
they
a
are
warrior?
defending, like they are like a country in a sense.
Sure.
Yeah, at the core principle of being a police officer, you're essentially, I guess you're defending your country against, domestic crime.
Well, I appreciate your opinions, gentlemen. Let's get into the guns. So,
let me take a sip of the sake here.
Max, at the beginning of the episode, mentions that both sides are bringing firearms. This is the first episode where we're getting modern firearms. And he said, because of the instant lethality that those bring, it's really anyone's game. And I just love that statement because we talked about last episode, Pirate vs. Knight, how that really, Deadliest Warrior really shines as a concept in that episode. Can we do scientific tests to determine who would win this fight? Modern firearms, I'd say, almost completely undermines the concept of Deadliest Warrior, because how do you test really what gun is better? I mean, certain guns are better, but if a gun is a gun, it's instantly lethal for the most part. And one side is just bringing like a better gun or a faster firing gun. Does that really determine who's deadliest? Because let me put it to you this way. A Viking and a samurai. You give the Viking his long sword and shield, and you pit him against the samurai who's got a katana in his armor. And you say, okay, we can test the armor here, we can test the shield, we can see like how these hold up, and we can take a look at the training that these guys received. Who do we think would win? It's kind of a tough call. And then we say, okay, let's take a Mafia guy, give him a Thompson, and a Yakuza guy and give him a Sten, and they're just going to shoot at each other. Isn't it just kind of luck? Like,
yeah.
to
How
a
much
degree,
training are any of those guys going to have? You know, there's probably some like 19-year-old kid just joined the Mafia on like because he's broken, has nothing.
Yeah.
He can't get any other work, and he just gets handed a Tommy gun.
In a one-on-one fight where I'm facing a 1920s monster and I have a Sten, I might be able to win over 1,000 battles. Like, just because like we're talking about two untrained warriors. I mean, and yeah, the instant lethality of these guns does pose a problem. When Max says like, yeah, we have to avoid the instant kill, and Drew Sky's like, to avoid the battle being won by one lucky shot, we have a 5v5. Really, if you think about it, the ancient warriors, they could win with a lucky shot. Like, we played Deadliest War of the game, which I understand is not the same thing, but like that can be decided at long range with a lucky shot.
Yeah.
At close range, they can get a lucky hit in the beginning. So like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know,
yeah,
it's endless.
It's the idea that like a lucky shot is going to be undermined by running this thing 1,000 times, and then an extra lucky shot from the gun is going to then be thwarted by having 5-on-5 1,000 times.
Although there's multiple lethal shots per turn,
Yeah.
which could be 5. So like, none of this adds up.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Do
Is
you
what I'm
think they
getting at.
even did that in the sim, or the 5v5 was just for the reenactment at the end to make it look better?
Or maybe they kept bringing it up because we're like, it's not going to make sense unless we mention that's a 5v5.
Yeah.
They have to think the reenactment is the sim.
But all that being said, it is fun to watch someone shoot a gun into a ballistic gel. So at long range, the Mafia brings the Tommy gun. Stats listed for the Tommy gun. And I want you guys to fact check this because I noticed a big error in the Sten gun that stood out to me. But Tommy gun range is 165 yards. That seems kind of subjective and random. Caliber is 45. Ammo is a 45 magazine to 100 round drum. And rate of fire is 1,000 rounds per minute. I just want to say a couple things before I turn it over to you, Luke. We're introduced to the Tommy gun with Joe making a farting noise with his mouth as he pantomimes strafing the gun.
Just. It's a very powerful weapon. It's going to give you a serious case of lead poisoning.
He's like, you just take this thing and go. They first test the Tommy gun by firing it at a single foam target. They insert a full auto gun firing sound effect, even though you can watch the bolt on the top of the gun and it's clear Tommy Bonanno is shooting single fire at this target. It's weird that they insert that cheesy sound effect because it's so distracting. Like, why not just show him shooting it like one bullet at a time? Like
a static shot. Whenever you see them cutting around every half second, you know some shit's being done.
Yeah. For the second test, they have Thomas fire the Tommy gun at 7 foam targets that are set up in a cute little mock restaurant scene. I wrote that it's actually pretty funny and I love it. They play the same full auto sound effect again, even though you can clearly see Thomas is firing in like bursts anytime they show him.
Wait, Thomas?
Yeah, so I want to say they have some shots of Thomas firing the Tommy gun in bursts, but when they show someone firing in full auto, it's like an over-the-shoulder shot, and it's not Thomas firing.
Wait, his name's Thomas Bonanno?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was Joe Bonanno.
No, that was the real gang.
Joe Bonanno's his cousin.
I was like, who the fuck is Thomas?
Yeah,
sorry, my
it's
bad.
very confusing to write notes when Thomas is firing the Tommy gun. Joe Bonanno was his cousin,
Okay,
supposedly.
Yeah.
So we watched a video recently on Thane Thran's channel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We'll put the link. He interviews a guy who was the production designer on Deadliest Warrior, who had a lot of behind the scenes info that was pretty interesting.
We'll have to do a deep dive on that video because it's a wealth of information for Deadliest Warrior fans.
But what's relevant right now is to say, go check it out if you want to, if you're a big fan of the show. But what's relevant right now to say is that he did most of the weapons testing. And we noticed it more and more after watching that you'll see multiple times in this episode an over-the-shoulder shot where the guy who's firing is like silhouetted, kind of. And they cut it with footage of like the expert firing or making it look like he fires. They make it appear that the expert did it, but it was really like the production designer.
So he, at the end of our association, because he brought in a couple of knives, he actually gave me this knife. 3, 2, 1, fire!
Yeah, it happens a lot in Pirate First Night.
Yeah.
When I was editing the last episode, David Hernandez, like you'll never see a complete shot of him holding the sword whenever doing the cutlass test and him going through the pig. You only see his arm as it's going through the pig, and the shots are clearly stitched together.
Yeah.
Same with the halberd test. You never see Josh Pa, whoever, actually do it. And every time, presumably, you don't see the actual person doing the test.
Yeah.
It's not that expert.
Yep. So with this one, you can see the silhouette. The guy that ends up firing this full auto at all the targets is probably our boy that's in the interview there. I wanted to say before I kicked it over to you, Lucas, I have no idea what this test shows other than rate of fire. It's not testing the range of a gun. It's not testing like grouping. And it's not testing stopping power because they're just shooting at foam targets. Like, so it looks cool. It's fun, but it just shows that like it shoots fast and can kill people. I wanted to kick it over to you, Lucas. How accurate are the stats they give on the Tommy gun? And what do you think about this test?
The test and the gun, two separate thoughts. The test is... It's like whenever you and your buddies go to the range and you just set up a bunch of crap and it's just like wasting ammunition.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's no scientific data out of that test other than, you point it at things and it puts holes in them.
Yeah. With this show, you get so lost in like the entertainment factor all the time. Like, oh, look at that. The wine bottle's exploding from a Thompson, that you just sit back sometimes and you're like, what data is this supposed to be collecting?
It's not. I think it's just meant to look cool.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get hit with a bullet, you get hit with a bullet. Both of these especially aren't wearing any type of like body armor or anything. If any of these guys get hit with any of these guns, they're dead.
Yeah.
Is what it boils down to. So I think the tests are just, they were just having fun essentially in filming it. Something like some just cool looking B-roll footage.
Yeah.
But the actual Thompson, they don't do as bad as a job with the stats as they do with the Sten. We'll get there.
Yeah.
It's the Thompson machine gun. It's blowback operated, air cooled, mag fed, select fire. One thing that annoys me, they keep calling the magazine clips throughout the entire episode.
I noticed that too.
A magazine is not a clip for anyone who doesn't know that. A clip is a device for filling a magazine. Mm-hmm. That is not what you fill with bullets and stick onto the gun.
Yeah. Over the years, like clip has just become slang for magazine.
But it's not the same. It is a magazine, which that's like me nitpicking little things there.
Is that your drill sergeant just yelling at you?
Oh,
do not call that a clip, Earhart.
You do get yelled at.
Grievance relievance already.
Yeah. That is my grievance relievance for this episode. The real rate of fire. There was a couple different variants on the Thompson. I have a model right here. I have a 10-pound airsoft cyber gun model on my lap for reference. But the real rate of fire, the ones that they're using, I'm assuming, was the M1928A1, which is the drum mag compatible, because there was the M1A1, which was stick mag compatible only, which was more for military use.
Also, the pre-order bonus for Call of Duty World at War.
Was it?
With GameStop. So shout out to those who pre-ordered.
But about a 700 to 800 round per minute. There was a variant of the Tommy gun nicknamed the Annihilator that fired up to 1,500 rounds per minute.
Wow.
And I kind of want to look more into that because if anyone knows anything about weapons, that is like an ridiculously high rate of fire, like unachievable. Yeah. So I want to look more into that. It was originally invented for World War I trench warfare, and then they didn't finish it before World War I. So that's why you see it in World War II games.
Yeah.
But pretty accurate. The test is just kind of nonsense. It's a Tommy gun. I mean, wait till we get to the stats. You'll it's got a big ass drum mag on it. I think they used the 50 round drum mag on it.
The only other thing I wanted to ask you, did the Mafia, did you find anything that the Mafia actually used the Tommy gun, or is that just like a creation of Hollywood?
John T. Thompson, a U.S. Army Brigadier General, was the one who invented this. It was originally made for military use, but it was made available to civilians. And I'll throw this out there because it'll become relevant in a minute. It cost $200 in 1921 to buy a Tommy gun.
It's a lot of money, actually, right?
That is a shit ton. It translates to $2,902 in 2020, nice. Which is it's a pretty chunk of change. I don't know anyone that dumb to spend that much money on a gun. But it's pretty much you'd have to be in the Mafia or making some serious money to afford one back then. Yeah, they did use them. It is true. It was the gun used in the famous St. Valentine's Day massacre. Was 2 Tommy guns. So it's probably one of the few guns the Mafia would have actually used had it actually boiled down to a shootout.
I wanted to get that question out of the way early because I feel like we are not going to get a satisfying answer for any other weapon that's in this episode. So Craig, we got the Yakuza. They're bringing the Sten gun. The range they give is 220 yards, so slightly more than about 80 yards more than the Tommy gun.
Wrong.
Although if people just fight in a single room in a building, I don't know if the yardage. See what I'm talking about when I say what yard do they start at with these things?
A football stadium?
Yeah, is someone really taking their Sten gun and hiding behind a trash can and shooting 200 yards down the street at a guy? Where are they?
Can I peel back the curtain of what I think that is? Why they gave the Sten this unrealistic yardage? Yeah. I think that was to offset the drum magazine on the Thompson in the show's eyes. This... there are 2 submachine guns.
Own facts to offset.
Yeah. I think they do that though. They try to offset to but this one has this, but this one has this.
They give it a it's firing a 9mm round. The ammo is a 32 round magazine, so it's like a stick mag that sticks in the side of the gun.
You mean clip?
And I highlighted this. The rate of fire is listed as 24 rounds a minute. I even double checked that before the show, before the podcast, because I was like, that can't be right. I must have mistyped that. And I looked back and nope, it says 24 rounds per minute, which cannot be true. It's got to be, how much is the rate of fire on a Sten? Do either of you guys know? Or
500 to 600 rounds a minute in reality.
I mean, that's what a machine gun fires at.
Yeah, it's like an average at its time machine gun.
24 rounds a minute is like a bolt action rifle. So they never explain why the Yakuza are using the British Sten. Craig, I gotta ask, I don't know if this is going to turn out very well. Did you find anything at all online, why the Yakuza might have been given the Sten gun in this episode?
Okay, so... Before we get into your question, I want to make something very clear. Peel back the curtain, and I might ruffle some feathers. So, full disclosure, out of pretty much everybody that you'll see on this podcast, everybody is into guns and military except for me. So, what I find interesting about guns probably is very little compared to what you guys might find interesting. For the Sten and also the Walther, I think you guys might have mentioned that, these are interesting guns with some cool backgrounds. The vast majority of stuff is on the Mark I, it had a wire stock, but then on the Mark II, they improved the rifling. And it's I don't give 2 shits about that stuff. So I did not have many notes because it was not interesting to me.
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, that's also why I'm hosting next week, because I don't know a lot about these weapons. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, and this is a core problem with the show, these are 2 groups of people that do not have armories or governments supplying them with weapons. They're going to use whatever is at their disposal. If you Google Yakuza weapons, all you will find is shit from Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah.
If you Google Yakuza Sten or Sten Japan, you will just find the Deadliest Warrior wiki.
That's what I ran into because I was curious myself, and I'm like, is there any evidence of this? And all I found was Deadliest Warrior stuff because, like you said, criminal organizations don't have set loadouts, right? It's not what weapons did samurais use? And you can look at that period of time It's like they used whatever they could get.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem with the Sten. But I don't know if they just wanted like a different weapon to feature on the show, because someone questioned this on the Aftermath, actually. There's someone who writes in, honestly non-hostile, and was like, okay, I sort of get the Walther because they were allies with Germany, but how would they get a Sten? And their answer on the Aftermath is just basically like, the black market, which is a very convenient answer, because you can't evaluate something that's unregulated. Like, there's no info on what's on the black market.
Yeah, you can get anything theoretically on the black market, right?
Yeah, so I found no information on them using the Sten. Is it possible? I mean, the only thing I could think of is the Sten was commonly used by, I guess I should maybe get into a little bit of the history that I found.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was used primarily by the British, as a lot of people know. It was low cost, simple design, and that made it famous to a lot of insurgency groups. So contrary to the Thompson, which was very expensive, it was cheap. I mean, unreliable, but a lot of people could use it. So theoretically, it sort of makes sense if there's any gun that the Yakuza would have, especially in like a post-war Japan. Maybe they could like make a Sten. I don't know, but it's also very cheap. But there's no evidence of like, there was this one famous time where Yakuza mowed down a gang in a mall with a Sten.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't happen. So
yeah. Well, yeah, what I found on the Sten was just that, like what you pointed out, Craig, it was a cheap, easy to make thing that the British invented because they were in a rough spot in World War II and needed to just get guns out there, something that could fire around. They do a similar test with the Sten as with the Thompson. They shoot it full auto at one static target, and then they shoot at 3 targets at like a fruit stand set. And I will note that it does appear David is firing the weapon, David Kono, because they do show a full shot of him just firing it full auto. So I don't know if David is like just more qualified or comfortable or whatever.
because he's a descendant.
Right.
He grew up with it.
He grew up firing a
He was in the
Sten.
cradle with the Sten.
I will note, a funny note I noticed was in the fruit stand test, there's 3 targets, and Zero, Jeff asks, well, how are you going to handle this situation? And Zero goes, we're just going to strafe through and fire pop, pop, pop. Basically, one burst into each target, but then they just cut, and it's just David standing there shooting full auto.
Yeah. I will say really quick, I'm going to put this in the edit for maybe the few people who are watching. There is at least one dummy that I'm almost positive is based on the JoJo character, Yoshikage Kira. I'm going to put it in the edit, and you decide for yourself if this is not him, because it's like a purple suit and this dude with blonde hair. It like has to be, which is a very odd reference if there is.
There was a JoJo fan on the production team, and he's like, I'm going to dress up this guy like my boy.
Yeah, he was the first one. It's back when it definitely was not mainstream. This is the original JoJo meme.
So all the more I want to say about this test is they keep stressing, like with the Thompson, they keep stressing just the firepower. Like, it's brutal, it's fast. And so to contrast that, they try to market the Sten as like this, they keep talking about its impressive accuracy. And David even compares it at one point to a pinpoint laser. And I just want to say that aside from like what we know about the Sten, that it's like a shoddily made like pipe gun, basically, probably didn't have that great of accuracy. What we see is not impressive. Like, he shoots at a guy full auto from like 10 feet away. And when he does the fruit stand test and they're showing the high speed, they're all like gushing over how accurate the weapon is. You watch that scene, guys, you'll just see pieces of fruit flying up because David is missing the target. He's blatantly missing the mannequin and just hitting the fruit stand, and fruit is just exploding. Now, that does that on the Tommy gun test too, but at least they're not out there saying, man, this thing is a laser, you know? So he's just firing full auto from like 10 feet away. There's nothing tangible we get from any of these tests. They're entertaining, but the idea that the Sten is somehow proven to be more accurate than the Thompson is so stupid. I just
it's just an offset that they use. Yeah, I mean, just look at the thing itself. They do a lot of that on the show where they come up with like an unrealistic fact about something, which we'll see that more in the future when they start getting into more weaponry. They'll stick by like one fact with this gun, and that's why it's better than the other one. I mean, just look at how like the Sten is made, and just look at it. It is not an accurate gun at all. It doesn't look like you can hold that thing like. It's made for very close encounters, quickly getting bullets.
Firing a Thompson on with the round drum in, I'm sure you're not going for like a 200-yard headshot.
No.
But like they're the ones that bring it up. They're like, "Oh, Sten it's precision." They keep saying it's like a precision weapon, like it's a sniper rifle or something. It's like it's a submachine gun that was made in some guy's basement.
It was like a first attempt at making a submachine gun.
Ridiculous.
The Mark II, actually.
They cost, if they were produced in Enfield, England, was one of like the major places. They would cost $11 to make one. That is not even to make
money
one.
Back there.
Yeah, I misspoke. Not $11 to make, $11 to purchase one.
Yeah,
is all. Which I brought up the $200 earlier, which that's the like the price discrepancy between the two.
Yeah,
but I gotta ask, how did they have the time in Enfield to even create this weapon when in Conjuring 2 we learned that Enfield is very haunted? When Valak.
Yeah, was Valak responsible for
Valak made
Operation
the Sten, confirmed.
Valak was like whispering to the Third Reich about Operation Sea Lion. He's like, do it, come across the water.
Pretty sure those timelines don't even line up, but...
You think Ed Warren made the Sten gun to help fight the Nazis?
Yeah, remember at the end of the movie when he took out the Sten and he's like, I know your name.
Yeah. All right.
On the topic of marksmanship, Zero does say after David, I guess after he does the Sten demonstration when they're watching the footage, he's like,
I would have to say, sir, this is excellent shooting. In a second and a half, you wiped them out and had ammo to spare. I think this proves that precision dominates power.
And again, it just points to this weird, like, Asian martial arts motif that they think all of the Yakuza fall into, So I just thought that was a dumb sentence.
Why not the Type 100? That's like a Japanese submachine gun. Why wouldn't they, even if they were faking it, why wouldn't they just choose like a Japanese?
Why not just give them Japanese guns, right? Like,
well, Craig, we're going to get into this, and I know we are. Did the Yakuza even use guns? That's going to be a big topic here.
Now, it's sort of a big topic. Do you want to go with that
now? Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think
these are the most important guns on the episode, so
that's why I wanted to cover it here.
Take the time we need, Yeah.
So one other thing I really wanted to research was the history of gun control in Japan, because that's a super important part about obviously the Yakuza and organized crime. So gun control in Japan is super strict. So owning a gun is one crime. Owning a bullet is a different crime. Owning both is a higher crime, and actually firing a gun, regardless of the result, is also like a totally different crime. It could be like a several-year prison sentence for firing a gun, which is crazy.
I picture a guy standing there where he picks up a gun, and the cops, don't do it. He picks up the magazine, don't you do it. He puts it in, like loads it. He's like, you pull that trigger, I swear you don't do it. You did it.
It's like the Key and Peele like referee sketch I'm talking about.
He writes a new fine every time.
Yeah. But I mean, consequently, it's worked. Like, gun deaths are almost nothing. I think I saw in like 2016 there was one gun death, and it was a Yakuza member. So, which is crazy because like,
well, if anybody's
Chicago,
if anybody's gonna have them, right? Like, it would be a gang member, right? But yeah, and also this is post-war Japan. Like, America's occupying mainland Japan at this time.
That's another part of the story. Is we talked a little bit about in the Samurai Viking episode, the ban on katanas, which I saw the law was enacted in 1958, which is a good bit after World War II. So I have to imagine that the confiscation of firearms and katanas were happening before that. Maybe it was just finally official. So guns are very scarce to begin with. There was a boom in firearms actually in like the 90s with the Yakuza, but until then I find it would be very unlikely that they would use them openly. And even nowadays, like, they have guns, but they prefer not to use them because it's very easy way to go to jail, I imagine. But also because it's just not they don't necessarily need them.
Yeah.
So that was an important part of history with the Yakuza is guns and stuff like that. And the answer is not really. They do have guns, but in Japan, it's not like here in America.
Yeah. Well, Max ends up giving the edge to the Tommy gun and thus deciding the fate of the episode. Because when we get to the results, you'll see that we may as well have not tested any of the other guns. I think the Tommy gun gets 499 kills in the sim, which if it's out of 1,000 is 1 kill shy of 50% of the kills. So the Tommy gun is 1 kill shy of having the same amount of kills as every other weapon we see, including the Sten. So I guess I can ask you guys if you agree. I feel like I already know. Craig's going to be like, sure. And Lucas is going to be like, hell yeah.
Pretty much was exactly what I was going to say. Right. I mean, if you're talking about a Tommy gun versus a gun that shoots 24 rounds a minute, then I got to go with the Tommy gun.
Yeah, more rounds, higher rate of fire, probably a better manufactured weapon.
Yeah.
It gets the edge.
I would agree. I think it's better manufactured gun, in my opinion. So that moves us on to explosives. This is the first time on Deadliest Warrior we get a separate category for explosives. The first explosive we see was the Pirate Granado, but it was filed under special weapons. This we got general explosives. So the Yakuza are bringing the ceramic grenade, 3 inches in diameter, weight of 11.5 ounces, made of pottery, TNT, and gunpowder. So the show claims that these grenades were part of a massive stockpile that was made by the Japanese government, and it was helped to defend mainland Japan in the event of like an American invasion. Of course, that invasion never happened because of the atomic bombs and Japan surrendering. But Craig, can you tell us a little bit about the ceramic grenade?
Yeah, this was actually probably my favorite weapon in researching, and the show actually got it very right. So the ceramic grenade, near the end of World War II, as Japan was losing, they started going to full overdrive with production, and so they started using kilns, which obviously don't typically make weapons, but they, use them to create these ceramic grenades as additional, sources of weapons and explosives. They passed them out to a lot of civilians in case of a U.S. invasion of Japan, which makes so much sense for the Yakuza to have them. You would think that someone like them, I obviously have not seen any evidence of like, here's this time the Yakuza used a ceramic grenade.
Yeah.
But like, it makes way more sense for them to have the ceramic grenade that was passed out to everybody, or to have stockpiles of it, because it was something that people were given during that time. So the show actually gets it very right. And I think pretty interesting history.
Cool. Yeah, I thought it was neat to look up too. This grenade is eerily similar to the Pirate Granado.
That's true.
I wanted to note. And they do the exact same test if you watch. So the Granado, they test on like 3 pigs. This, they test on 3 foam targets, but they hang it up like the same way, most likely at like the same range. Difference is Granado has like shrapnel, and this is just looks like it's more of a high explosive test. So Zero claims that it's more like a modern flashbang. Which was the line that was probably just given to him to say. And then the narrator says they're not intended to be lethal. Yet, when they test it, Dr. Dorian looks at a dent made in a foam target and is like, well, this guy's dead. And it does get some decent amount of kills in the sim. So, I don't know, just a little oversight on the show's part. I know nobody here really knows the lethality of one of these things, but
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's rare, but you can get killed by a flashbang in Call of Duty.
It's true. If you get hit on the head with it, bonked on the head at low health. Yeah. And to counteract this, the Mafia brings out the Molotov cocktail, which is statted at 1 foot, 2 pounds, and made of glass and combustibles. I would like to note that the term Molotov cocktail, these Mafias are from 1929. The term Molotov cocktail was not used until during World War II. So it was actually coined by the Finnish in the first war between Finland and the Soviet Union in 1939. It's a reference to the Soviet foreign minister at the time. I'm sorry if I mispronounce his first name, Vyacheslav Molotov. And it stuck out to me immediately because I was like, Molotov cocktail's named after a Russian dude. I was like, and it comes from like the Soviets and stuff using it in World War II, which I was sort of wrong about. But yeah, that was interesting to note. So little anachronism of the episode. Now the test for the Molotov cocktail, I understand why they call it that though, because everybody knows
it's just the common name for it. Yeah.
What are they like? The fireball?
I wrote down, not used until after World War II, after the Soviet politician, and I put, hope someone else has his name written down.
Yeah. Don't worry, I made sure. The test for the Molotov cocktail, they throw it into a car with temperature sensors on it. And one funny meme about it is that you can see they have a full fire crew on standby at the range.
So fucking bored.
That it was just really funny because they're like, we have a fire crew, and they showed them. We all busted out laughing just watching the episode.
In their defense, I think that is part of a safety protocol for any TV show, but it looks hilarious.
Yeah, of course. I'm not questioning why they did it.
Why bring them up? Like, they didn't want to be on camera.
It was just so funny. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is all right, we caught this. If you pay close attention to Joe's throw. Boy. So the throw we see Joe make goes directly into the front seat of the car. And Joe, and probably not coincidentally, says, he's like celebrating. He's like, yes, as if he screwed it up the first time. And Craig mentioned, he goes, I wonder if he screwed it up the first time, and that's why he's celebrating. When we watch the high-speed footage of the Molotov going into the car, it's clearly a different throw. And in this throw, the Molotov lands upside down, bounces, and the towel that's on fire at the top flies out of the bottle, and you can see it's just going to extinguish in the air. I don't know why they showed that shot. It's so weird. It's not the one that we see go into the car and actually set it on fire. I bet it was a screw up. And
because why would you, if you knew that the Molotov cocktail was going to go into the car, catch fire, and that's what it did, why would you celebrate that it landed in the car? Because that's what he knew was going to happen.
He does the Napoleon Dynamite. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we did like a forensic analysis of like how the bottle bounced, and it doesn't make any sense. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, who fucking cares? But it just goes to show, when you really peel off the layers of the show and look into it, you are lied to so much.
So many seconds per It's an abusive relationship, but it is entertaining. Luke, I would ask you if the Mafia used this, but there's probably not a specific yes or no on that.
This is kind of like a weird question in a way, because the first recorded use of what is now known as a Molotov cocktail was in the Spanish Civil War in 1936.
Okay.
But I read that fact and I'm like, I'm pretty sure someone would take a bottle during Prohibition, could take a bottle of alcohol and just shove a rag into it.
Yeah.
I don't know where that fact came from, that was the first recorded instance of it ever being used. Because I'm pretty sure, a shop's not paying its money. It's not hard to just light alcohol on fire and throw it.
I did want to mention this is during Prohibition, though. So wouldn't booze have been worth some money for the Mafia to sell? Maybe. I know you don't
making enough money.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact profitability of alcohol in the 1920s off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But what I thought was funny is it's illegal to possess a Molotov cocktail, but the two components it takes to make it are completely legal. It's a rag and a bottle of.
So it's just illegal to make one.
Yeah, if you put them together, it's illegal. Which the cops standing there, don't you do it?
There's a lot about that with explosives specifically. Like, you can buy a lot of components to make explosives that are legal, but like making an explosive and setting one off is like, hey, ATF calling your house up, hey, what was that bang?
When I searched up what did the Mafia use them for, it was commonly for like businesses that didn't pay or rival businesses. It was just used for arson in the middle of the night. It wasn't ever used to, kill anyone as far that I could find. I mean, maybe someone that happened to, but it was usually for like arson attacks at night.
Yeah. They end up giving the edge to the ceramic grenade because the Molotov takes a few seconds before it lights so you can escape. What do you guys think? Luke, you're raising your hand. What do you have to say about that?
The test for this one makes no sense. Why did they not do the same test?
Right.
What is the scientific difference between, how do they get data out of throwing one into a car with one guy and like one against a couple foam dummies? Why did they not do the same test? This whole thing
they never do the same test on this show, and it's always kind of frustrating because they're like, oh, we're scientific, and then Jeff's just like gushing at like how hot the interior of the car is getting. He's like, that roof is spiking, and it's like, I bet it's
on fire.
It's an open flame in a car.
Yeah, I mean, they do mention it, that it's like a flash, a ceramic grenade, and it's supposed to be non-lethal, but they don't talk about it much.
No, they don't.
That's the whole point of the ceramic grenade. You would think that Max would say some shit about, we gotta add in the stun damage, which we've never done before. Like, you know what I mean? So I think they mainly tested the lethality of the ceramic grenade.
What gets more kills in the ceramic grenade?
The ceramic grenade gets like 26 kills, and the Molotov gets 2.
The non-lethal grenade gets more kills, and then the Molotov at least has potential to get kills.
Yeah,
and it only gets 2.
So the way it's presented, I was agreeing with the ceramic grenade getting the edge because I would rather have something like that you can light and just throw than a Molotov. But like, then they make this whole fuss about how it's not lethal, but then it kills somebody in the thing. I told you guys before this podcast, I bet you money that they just used the stats from the Granado and put them in, and they just gave the Yakuza the Granado. Because Max is like, oh, I already have the code for this one saved, so here it is, and just ran with that.
Well, this brings back the circumstance, too, of where are these guys battling? Are they taking like a replica of like, Tokyo or New York City, and they're fighting in the buildings or the field? Because these Molotovs would have potential to like, burn down whole buildings and everything else. It's...
What did they put in? Where are you throwing it from?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I sound like I'm arguing like in defense of the Molotov. I'm saying this whole test doesn't make sense. Yeah. And the fact that it only gets 2 kills kind of bugs me because it's still like a flammable throwing device. I don't know like what they put into the sim for this one.
Think of it. The Yakuza aren't going to be standing still. They're going to be like moving around.
Very true. Very true. So, okay. I wanted to get into this. We see in the transition between the explosives and the short range weapons, we see Joe and Thomas messing with a table of weapons, most of which are never used. And I noticed all throughout this episode in reenactments and then in the footage of the experts at their tables, right? They have all these weapons that they never test, that some of which would make a lot more sense to test, in my opinion. So these include a set of brass knuckles, a stiletto, a garrote, and a Colt 1911 pistol. And then we also get to see so many shots of Yakuza handling katanas. Like every shot, that's what you see the Yakuza guys have. And none of these are ever tested.
They use almost all of them in the reenactment, though.
Yeah, exactly. In the reenactment, you see like all of them. And so I wanted to put, it should be noted, we already saw the katana. Someone in the aftermath for this episode asks why there's no katana. Max gives like a bunch of reasons. Like, I mean, it's an honorable weapon. You wouldn't take that into like a street fight. And then he realizes that what he's saying sucks. So he just goes, I mean, we already tested the katana, so we kind of just wanted to have something else, which it's like, okay, fair enough.
I think that's the real answer.
Yeah, that is the real answer. And a lot of the aforementioned Mafia weapons, I will note, get tested in later episodes. The stiletto, notorious stiletto, and the brass knuckles get tested in the Al Capone episode.
Ever heard of them?
And I believe the CIA brings the garrote in the season 2 CIA versus KGB, which you probably forgot was an episode of Deadliest Warrior. Notoriously, though, they never test a Colt 45 on this show, which is a disappointment.
Which is like a staple of like
very disappointing.
America.
Disappointing. One of the coolest guns ever made. So very disappointing. But Would have made more sense to test that against the Walther, in my opinion, but, moving on to short range. So, how do I even come up with questions for you guys? The Mafia brings the baseball bat, which is 3 feet, 2 pounds, and made of ash or maple wood. Joe manages to break the spine of a pig carcass with a baseball bat.
What does that mean? Like, they use pigs because it's similar to human flesh.
Yes.
But slashing a pig vertebrae, what does that mean?
I want to point out my favorite moment of the episode. Dr. Dorian comes over with a scalpel and cuts the pig open to show how many vertebrae have been broke. He's like, we're looking at like 4 or 5 vertebrae here. We get a fantastic scene following up this test where Joe is antagonizing Team Yakuza and Zero threatens Joe.
You're up next. Let's see what you got. See if you can be the hero.
We can do
Zero.
the same thing without a weapon. These are just to distract you while I break you with my foot.
Lay off the sake, brother. Chill out.
Which maybe these guys have got to make the list at the end of the season of better, more memorable experts that were on.
They'll get the honorable mention.
Yeah.
It's clearly a scripted event because Joe has no emotion. He's like, lay off the sake, brother.
Also, like, if one of the experts made a motion to attack someone on set, you
with
would
all those weapons.
You would think a show that's taking the time to show you we have a fire team, we have a fire crew out to put this Molotov out, is not going to even show that footage, right? Like, oh, we don't want to show that. Like,
there's also like people, dumbasses at home watching, including us when we were like 12, that are like, "Get him, Joe! Yeah, get him!"
Yeah. So then I just want to say we then get a shot of Zero kicking the pig. So it's the same pig from the baseball bat test, and then he lays a kick on its back. Just saying again, like, apparently the Yakuza are all going to be modeled after Zero Kazama, basically have his like perfect zero body fat physique.
How many people could that pig have fed? Instead, you have to waste a pig on a fucking baseball bat test and a kick from Zero Kazama.
You go down to the butcher's. Oh yeah, I'd like 1 pig. Oh, you guys eating good tonight? We're gonna hit it with a baseball bat. Cool, very cool.
Yeah, I will say I think Joe has great form with the baseball bat.
Yeah, he does. Joe does have great form with the bat.
Some little league, perhaps.
And oh, I'm walking in. Joe's got to get his gabagool.
There it is.
A gabagool. So the Yakuza answer this at short range with the nunchucks, which are 3 feet, 2 pounds, and made of wood with a steel chain. I do want to say, in Zero's defense, he does appear to be, to my untrained eye, pretty adept with the nunchucks. And I want to mention that they keep editing a freaking shitty sound effect in every time he's twirling the nunchucks. It's like, and that is even in the test they do that. They test the nunchucks against a ballistic gel where it's able to penetrate the skull after multiple strikes. And then Joe comes up and strikes the gel with the bat, causing the skull to shatter. Trying to like one up it, being like, oh, my stick is bigger than your stick. Dr. Dorian ends up giving the edge to the baseball bat for superior damage. Luke, I'm not even going to ask you any questions about the baseball bat. I'm sure the Mafia had them laying around. Like,
I mean, if you just think about it in principle, it's completely legal to walk around with a baseball bat. It's threatening. It would hurt like shit if you got hit with one.
Yeah, it's getting hit with a club.
Like, yeah, it's a club. Is what there was a famous thing where Al Capone, ever heard of him? He supposedly beat 2 or 3 people to death with a baseball bat, and I think that's where the whole mafia image that where they get associated with baseball bats comes from, because it was like a very famous news article. I think that kind of put that in, like, oh, the Mafia they'll beat you with a baseball bat if you don't pay them.
Craig, I'm more interested. Can you tell us a little bit about the nunchucks? My specific question, I don't know. I didn't research. Are they a real weapon, or is this like an invention of Hollywood?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, did you want to talk about like the segment they have about like the pinky? that earlier, or like the cutting off the finger?
I'm pretty sure I have notes about that at some point.
Okay. Because it's like right before this test.
Oh, yeah. So I actually do have some notes about that one and the Mafia Blood Oath. But why don't you tell us about the nunchucks a little bit first?
Okay. So this was obviously a big question mark. Another one of my questions I was looking into, because you look at a pair of nunchucks and, you know, they don't seem very lethal. They look very cool, but they don't seem very lethal.
My nuts start hurting instantly.
Yeah. So there is a confusing origin with the nunchucks where some people thought it was supposed to be a South Asian flail, but not the flail like the knight flail, but flail is in like a farming instrument that they would use, and maybe it was modified. There's debate as to what type of weapon it is, which goes to show how often it was used. The popularity of the nunchuck is due entirely to Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Because of him, they were largely believed to be dangerous and were restricted in Norway, Canada, Russia, Poland, Chile, and Spain, and they're still illegal in Germany.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is so funny because he's who I picture with the nunchucks, and apparently the global leaders of the earth thought so too.
Yeah. There's no evidence that they weren't used, but there's no evidence that they were used.
Okay.
Now, I think to point to if they were used or like how you would use them in battle, look at how Zero tests the nunchucks. He just takes them and then beats the fucking dummy over the head with them. That's what I would use them for. So like, it's a pretty dumb weapon to use, and like a Yakuza, again, in your mind, or a movie definitely needs nunchucks. But practically, like, yeah, if it's like guy going crazy with the nunchucks, and thank you, and the guy, a mafia guy, comes with a baseball bat, he's gonna do what Joe did and just hit him over the head.
Yeah.
And like, you can't compete with the little like, you know, billy club on a chain. So yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say they probably were never legitimately used.
Yeah.
I think they're for show. It's like juggling almost.
Yeah.
Like someone could juggle knives and you could be like, was that ever used for combat? I think it's just for show.
It looks sexy in a movie. Like when Bruce Lee is about to fight 5 guys in a movie and he pulls out the nunchucks and he's like, takes off his shirt, 0% body fat, and just has this like nunchucks, and it's like, I love making that sound.
I was going to say, I bet you like making that sound.
I love making that sound. And then he's just beating up like 5 guys going, wah! You know, it is really entertaining, but as an actual weapon, like, give me a baseball bat every freaking day, man.
David compares it to a pipe bomb.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
What?
That may be worse than the Pirates Delta Force comparison.
At least that could like maybe translate.
Yeah.
The thing that I thought was like kind of funny almost, every time I tried to like research any of these weapons and associate them with the Yakuza games just came up. It was like how to unlock the nunchucks in Yakuza 5.
Yeah.
Also, I'm picturing someone carrying, like, you're walking around the street in your suit jacket and you've just got nunchucks tucked into your pocket. Like, oh, I bet I want someone to mess with me today. Please give me a reason.
It's the type of thing that you buy at a flea market and your mom like yells at you for getting. Just why would you bring something like that in my house? But in reality, like, what are you gonna do with nunchucks? You're gonna hit yourself in the balls.
Yeah, right.
How many fail videos are there? People just smacking themselves.
They pose such a hazard to yourself.
It's like if you took the baseball. This is why I agree with the Edge, because they give it to the baseball bat, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, it's like you took the baseball bat in half and then just put a chain in between it and like tried to hit a baseball with it.
Made it really complicated to use.
There's a reason police carry billy clubs and not nunchucks.
Yeah.
Police at one point I did read carry these, but they're probably like, yeah, we don't need this.
Yeah, like Sarge, I'm gonna need to like get rid of this thing.
Sarge, my nuts hurt.
Do you see? Here's like a drug bust, and the police officer's like, freeze!
The guy's, oh shit. he hits the cop with the baseball bat and he falls over dead.
Yeah. All right. So we agree with the Edge. Greg, you brought up Yakuza removing their pinky finger. I wanted to ask you about the pinky finger thing, because there's 2 things I've heard about the Yakuza before watching this show. It's removing a digit of the pinky finger and having some sick tattoos. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of information about the tattoos. I think it's just something the Yakuza do. Usually they'll have a full like back one.
It's like getting colors of your gang, basically. Like people know you are.
I saw that they would get them from traditional bamboo sticks or like steel. They would get
like
the
a stick
tattoos
poke tattoo, yeah,
like in the classic way, and that's why you always see them portrayed never wearing shirts. That was your unique body tattoo, and you would show it off.
Yeah,
like that was your body art.
Cool.
Yeah. As for the finger cutting, actually kind of an interesting reasoning behind it. So they don't do it so much anymore because it became an easy way to identify Yakuza. And while obviously being a Yakuza isn't illegal, you know, people probably have their eye on you.
Yeah.
You know, if you have missing fingers. The reason that they would do it is because back when you had swords, you would hold the sword with your bottom three fingers. So by cutting off a digit of those, you would not be as effective with the sword, and you'd be more reliant on the Yakuza for protection. So if you stepped out of line, that's a way to make you more reliant because you're not going to be as good with the sword. So that was the reasoning behind it, which is kind of cool. And obviously that's kind of fallen off.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Well, the question I had for you, Lucas, from the same segment, they talked about the blood oath that the Mafia would take. And they show a guy cutting his hand on like a Virgin Mary card, it looked like, and then burning it. Like Joe says, you know, you swear that you're going to be loyal and not going to rat or whatever. Is there a lot of information out there about the blood oath? Or
I didn't really find too much on the blood oath. It could exist. It couldn't. What I found more on was their oath of silence, which I think both the Yakuza and the Mafia have. Whenever you join, you have to take that oath of silence where you cannot reveal anything that happens in like the organization. And I covered earlier that there's that rumor that you had to partake in like a murder or something highly, you know, like a felony or something as like your initiation test. I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay.
Someone can look that up if they want, whether there is a blood oath or not.
I'm sure there is some sort of ceremony.
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to mid-range weapons. The only other potentially consequential weapons in the episode, but they're not. Because the SMGs get like... I should add the Thompson and the Sten gun together and see like how many kills they equate. I think it's like close to 80% of the kills.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be
majority.
majority.
Like 70-some percent. Sawed-off shotgun. The Mafia's bringing the sawed-off shotgun at mid-range. The range is given as 10 yards. So once again, are they starting in a field or are they in a building, right? Because that's a big difference. If you're in a house, 10 yards is more than enough. If you're in a field, you're getting screwed by that. You can hold 2 rounds because it's a double barrel. So it's a side-by-side double barrel. And they have it rated as 6 rounds a minute. I guess that's just what the average bloke can do with a double barrel.
Oh, crap. I dropped my round.
The thing about these ranges, if you think of a football field, obviously, you're on the 10-yard line with a shotgun, and your buddy is in the end zone, maybe a few steps back. He would not be scathed by a sawed-off shotgun blast.
Right, yeah.
That's what they're saying.
I have a huge grievance with that when we get to it.
I'm going to turn it over to you. Let me just get through my couple notes on it. So I want to say they keep inserting this annoying sound effect of a shotgun pumping each time they show the double barrel. They do it when Thomas like just shows it. It's either Thomas or Joe like closes the tubes. They insert. There's no pumping on a double barrel shotgun. They do that over and over again. It's like, is the editor just trolling us? I don't know. They also keep showing a hilarious reenactment where one Mafia guy shoots another guy who's taking a bath with a cigar. I noticed like they show it like 20 times where a guy kicks open the door and there's like a fat Italian dude with a cigar sitting in the bathtub and he just boom.
All the reenactments, I cannot follow the story in them. And one other like tiny moment I wanted to mention is like they're explaining the sawed off and Jeff goes, I'm not sure you'd maintain the internal ballistics. Shut the fuck up.
Fuck you, Jeff. Jeff Damelin, karate black belt. Come on the show.
You see, like when the first sawed off was made, like in a Mafia like back room, Jeff's in there. He's like, "Don't do that, man. You'll screw up the ballistics."
obviously a sawed-off is sacrificing range by shortening the barrel in exchange for being able to conceal something more easily. So why don't you go ahead, Luke? You're burning over here.
There is a large misconception with the act of sawing off a shotgun that it just all of a sudden reduces its range and creates this wide spread. Whenever you buy like a regular shotgun, they have an average barrel length, like 26, 28 inches, and they have what is called a choke at the end of it. The choke is what determines your spread. And you can remove a choke and then you cut that barrel in half. It is going to increase the spread. That is not significant. It is not this like picture that everyone like you saw off the shotgun and it's like, covers 50% of the area in front of you. On average, sawed off shotguns have probably around a 14-inch barrel was one of the most common lengths. It doesn't have any choke on the end of it, so you can't change the pattern of the shot coming out of it. They give it a range of 10 yards. That is not true. It's still a shotgun.
Well, before we get to the tests, they cover the Walther P38 and then they test both things. The Yakuza at medium range are bringing out the Walther P38, which is a pistol. I don't know why they're testing a pistol against a double barrel shotgun, even though like the Mafia had pistols. Wouldn't that be a better 1-to-1? They must have just thought the shotgun was cooler. So the range given for the P38 is 50 yards. It's a 9mm round, 8-round magazine. And then I just noticed right now, the rate of fire for the Walther, they put as 24 rounds per minute. I think somebody made a copy and paste error maybe when they made the Sten gun.
I should see it on the Prime Video if that's fixed, because
That'd be interesting.
There was an editing error on the DVD that Matt watches on that was missing in the Prime one.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe there was something they caught. Probably not.
Yeah, the guy probably caught it and was like, I don't care. So I wrote, I did not research these weapons, but I know enough to recognize that what they show, the picture that they show for the Walther is actually a German Luger. So that's another screw up that they do. Jeff asks Zero what the Yakuza are doing with a German gun.
So what's the Yakuza doing with a German weapon?
What, you didn't study world history? They fought together during World War II. It wasn't really standard issue to the Japanese, but after the war, it was easily accessible to the Yakuza via the black market.
And Zero gets extremely snarky with Jeff. And I wrote that I find it curious that they mention the Walther's country of origin, because it allows them to do this convenient excuse of being like, oh, what, you never heard of World War II? Japanese worked with the Nazis, so we got some shipments. Now, as stupid as that is, I cannot picture, can you imagine the Germans, they're about to get defeated. The Russians are closing in on one side, the Americans and British on the other, and the Germans are like, let's just get I'm not even going to try the accent. Let's get these crates of pistols over to the Japanese. It's like, are you going past the British and American navies to get there, or are you going over the Soviet Union and China to get there?
The Japanese also had their own pistol in World War II that was very mass produced, called the Nambu pistol.
I don't know why that's not used. It must have been a production reason, this was maybe more readily available. But I find it interesting that they mention that, because it only calls into question, why don't they mention that with the Sten? They don't bring it up, and it's because they don't have a convenient excuse for it. So for the tests, they test the Walther first. Zero shoots the handgun from about 20 feet or so. They don't show the range, of course, because why would you do that, in a scientific test? They shoot it from 20 feet or so at a piece of paper. And then they show him shoot at a human skull in the eyeball. But if you pay attention, you can tell that Zero's not the one shooting when it hits the skull. Shooter is wearing a long sleeve thermal shirt, and Zero's in a t-shirt. So, good.
But they still congratulate Zero on that.
Yeah, they're still great shot, Zero. And I noticed that they remark on Zero's grouping, because once again, this is the stereotype of these warriors, is that they're precise. And that they're bringing precision while the Mafia is bringing brutality, right? Zero, he might have shot a gun before. His grouping is not amazing at like 20 feet by any means. Like it's not.
It's like an average guy.
Precision. You know? It looks like a guy who shot this gun for the first time today. You know. So then they bring out Joe.
Well, I'll also say after shooting that dummy 5 times, Zero's like,
How will the guy be feeling after this?
Oh, he's done. He's done.
Yeah.
it's like, probably not good, Zero.
So Joe then tests the shotgun on the indoor range against a foam target. They show Joe firing the gun, but if you pay attention, it's not him that shoots it at the target. Ultimately, it's the same thermal shirt wearing man on the grassy knoll. And he puts 1 round in the torso and 1 round in the face. And I wrote, once again, you notice Joe takes neither of these shots. I wanted to write that they're at such a close range that the shotgun hardly spreads. It all hits in like one.
It's like a slug.
Yeah. And you can even see the plastic wad that holds the BBs. It's wedged into the foam target, like head wound. You can see it. They're so close that like
Those blow out after what, like 15 yards usually?
Yeah.
Yeah, those usually.
If you're shooting a shotgun at 50 yards, you can typically find them like laying near you somewhere or like halfway toward the target or something like that. In my experience. And I also
At
wanted
that point, it's almost like a blunderbuss.
Yeah.
Just like shooting a projectile.
Yeah.
It's a useless test.
I wanted to also point out that they're using birdshot.
I had that written. That was what I was sitting here. I'm like over here like staring at you because I wanted to say that.
They use birdshot in the test, which for people who don't know, 3 types of shotgun rounds. Okay, and this is not including the gauges like 12 and 20. 3 types of rounds though. You have birdshot, which is tiny pellets that are meant for bird hunting because they have the widest spread and you don't need a huge BB to take down a bird. So you want the best chance of hitting it. There's buckshot where, and you can Google how big these pellets are, but buckshot has BBs that are like considerably bigger than birdshot because they're meant to take down a bigger target. And buckshot is what you would use theoretically on a man-sized target. That's like if the military's not using slugs, they're using buckshot. And there's the 3rd type of round is the slug. And the slug is just basically a giant...
it's a big bullet.
Yeah, it's a giant bullet.
Yeah.
Slugs have the most damage, the most penetration, and the farthest range, but have the least amount of like spread because it's one thing. Buckshot, if they wanted to use something that spread with the shotgun, they'd be using buckshot. But they test birdshot, which is so strange because you probably wouldn't be using birdshot in like if you're the Mafia and you're specifically setting out to kill a Yakuza guy, you wouldn't be putting birdshot in the gun.
I found specifically off of a couple websites, surprisingly, the Mafia used number 3 or number 4 buckshot. That was their number 1 round of choice for when using the shotgun. I don't know why it was that like specific, but they used number 3 or number 4 buckshot.
There you go.
Coral Blue number 32.
So at the end of both of these tests, Joe makes the claim that you can get shot 5 times with the Walther and live. But if you get shot 1 time with the shotgun, you're done. I had in my notes. Do you guys have anything to say about this? Do either of you have anything to say about 12 gauge versus 9mm? I wrote down like how 50 Cent got shot like 9 times with a 9mm. But I have to say, from what I've read, one criticism of the 9mm is that it overpenetrates. And what I mean by that is 9mm is traveling at such a high velocity that if you shoot a guy at close range with it, the bullet goes directly through the body, making one clean like hole passing through, right? And sometimes in a heat of the moment where the adrenaline is pumping, the bullet not staying inside somebody and tearing them up, the bullet passing immediately through someone, there have been instances of people being able to keep fighting after that, like maybe long enough to kill you before they would bleed out or something. I have to say, I wonder how often that really happens. You know what would have been great on this test? Let's see how far of a range a sawed-off shotgun has. because we're even questioning the internal ballistics. And why not shoot a Walther against a ballistic dummy and see what it does?
I was going to say, you would need like a torso made of like a gelatinous material to see, and it needed to be clear to see how far the bullet goes in, but I don't know if those exist.
They were busy using that for the nunchuck test, though.
Yeah.
They do have penetration tests where they put like,
Yeah.
they make gel blocks specifically for testing penetration of bullets on skin, how far it would go through. 9mm usually goes pretty far in.
Yeah.
I was just making a meme. But
Yeah.
you know what Deadliest Warrior would have done in the penetration test? They would have used one of those mannequins and like measured with like a laser how far it went in. It'd have been like, oh,
Yeah, right. Wow, that's impressive. So Dr. Dorian, he gets a lot of screen time in this episode, I noticed. He gets to hand out like 4 of the edges in this episode. Dr. Dorian gives the edge to the shotgun because of the increased trauma of multiple pellets versus 1 bullet. What we're given, hard to determine. Once again, having 2 different weapons like this, it's hard to determine which one is better because it kind of depends on the situation. To me, a handgun is more like concealable, and based on the stats we're given, the Walther has a considerable range advantage on the double barrel, and Walther's got probably the biggest real life argument you can make. Walther's got an 8-round magazine, and you can change a magazine really quick, versus, which gives it a higher rate of fire, versus a shotgun that you got 2 shots, and they are going to be very powerful. But you got 2 shots in a 5-on-5 fight. I was like, ooh, that's not good. I hope you got someplace to take cover. I don't know. I guess in a way I agree. Like if a guy was 2 feet in front of me, I'd rather have a double barrel shotgun. But if I was in a 5-on-5 fight and we're starting at like 200 yards, theoretically, because that's where our SMGs go, I might rather have a Walther on me. Do you have any thoughts, Craig?
I agree.
Yeah. Luke?
I think looking at the real ballistics, like the real life, what would I rather have? The ballistics of a shotgun and the effective range that someone's going to be able to fire a Walther P38 is going to be, they're going to equal out. If someone's shooting at like 50 yards with a, say there's like the heat of battle, you got the adrenaline going, your effective range for shooting someone with a handgun is going to probably be like 25, 50 yards max as your like heart is beating. And the shotgun real life ballistics are also going to easily hit someone, 25, 50, maybe even 100 yards.
Yeah, I like that they put 50 yards on there because that's honestly not an easy shot with a handgun.
No, go out and try to shoot one. Like 25 yards even. Like when you're focusing is still difficult.
With
you
like
focus.
iron sights on a handgun, if you've never like trained with one. So it's different when it's the Green Berets, right?
Yeah.
It's like, here's the max range of a rifle because it's like, well, those guys can probably do that. But with the Mafia and Yakuza, it's like, how many of them have just been handed this pistol like for the first time? They've never fired it before. They're like, hey, serial number scratched off on this. Just go kill a guy with it. And it's like, okay. I mean, in that case, I'd probably rather have a double barrel because you know what it's going to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at the average Joe. When I was in the Marine Corps, I trained with an M9, and it is surprisingly more difficult to be accurate with a pistol than you have going into a thing. You're like, oh, this is going to be so easy. Like 25 yards, what is that? It's surprisingly more difficult to hit something, especially when there is, when you do pistol competition, that you put a time limit, which doesn't come close to real combat, but it replicates that where it gets your heart racing. Like you have something pressing on you, and then all of a sudden you start missing. I think I would rather have the double barrel just for the ease of use. And if you look with the real world ballistics, I think it's a much better choice for like a no-name gangster. But the facts I did write down, the ones that they used, they called them the lupara, which I thought was funny, is Italian for the wolf.
Hungry like the lupara for some gabagool. All right, that covers mid-range. Let's move on to special weapons. The Mafia brings the ice pick instead of a knife. The ice pick is 6 inches long, 8 ounces, wood handle with a steel spike. Joe stabs the ice pick through the back of the neck and then the top of a ballistics gel skull. and we get some fantastic banter between Joe and Zero.
You know, in our culture, we don't even shake hands, even with those we trust. What makes you think you're gonna get close enough to give us a kiss?
See, in our culture, surprise is part of the attack, so you'll find out soon.
Zero mentions that in Japanese culture, people typically don't get close to one another, like do handshakes or anything like that. And so he asks Joe, like, how are you going to make this happen, right? And Joe clumsily counters, and you can watch him like stammering through his comeback. He goes, well, see, in our culture, surprise is part of the attack. I have no idea what that means. That sentence makes no sense at all.
Yeah, that would be something that an Italian would put on Facebook. But I don't think it means anything.
Lucas, is there a particular story that goes with the ice pick? Is there a reason they picked it?
I was genuinely surprised. I thought this was just a complete bullshit out of nowhere thing that they just picked. It actually had slightly more history than some of the other things here.
Yeah.
That I was surprised with. Why they chose the ice pick, well, I believe before refrigerators were commonplace, ice picks were household tools, and they were actually very, very common for like petty thievery and pretty much like low down criminals. They were pretty dangerous too. I mean, they were literally just a spike on the end. You can conceal them, and they stabbed. I mean, even on the test, they do stab it right through that.
They do look deadly, and I will say much less conspicuous than having like a switchblade on you. Like if a cop finds a switchblade, it's like, what is that for? Versus ice pick, you can just like our Guido with the baseball bat. Guido can be like, hey, I got some ice to pick here. Hey, why are you giving me a hard time?
Well, during the 1930s to 1940s, there was like an epidemic of ice picks being used in stabbing crimes. Because it was not illegal to walk around with an ice pick, similar to the baseball bat. And I think what really brought it into light, there was a famous hitman called Abe Reles who would commonly stab his victims with an ice pick behind the ear.
The Iceman.
The Iceman.
The Iceman. Chocolate ale.
So I thought that was like, I was like, oh, okay. Like it might be a feasible weapon that a 1920s gangster would walk around with, because they were common household things. They were very popular apparently with crimes. And
I guess I just question it because it's like these guys are having a 5 versus 5 standoff.
Yeah,
it's like,
I mean, it's not practical in that sense, but like the history of it kind of like, I was like, oh, okay.
It
has base.
Makes sense that they picked it. It's not baseless, but it's also like, if I'm going to fight like an enemy gang, am I bringing a knife, or am I being like, hey, honey, give me that ice pick? Hey.
Yeah. With the baseball bat and like the ice pick, it's kind of like, did you ever see that Twitter video of that dude that protest? They're interviewing him and he has like a can of soup. and the lady's like, what are you doing with that soup?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, this is a soup for my family.
Yeah.
And he smiles at the camera.
So they move on to the Yakuza weapon, the Sai. If you've ever watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I should have mentioned Michelangelo carries the nunchucks and Raphael carries the
a lot
Sai.
of ninja representation on the Yakuza episode.
Right. So the Sai, 18 inches long, 2 pounds, wood handle with a steel blade.
Same.
I will once again, it does look like Zero knows what he's doing with these weapons, I will say, although once again I have an untrained eye for it, so he could just be faking it. Instead of a ballistics gel, they could have even used the same ballistics gel. They test the Sai against a foam target that's been covered in like a strange rubber or plastic that's meant to imitate skin, but it's looks to be much tougher because Zero, when he's like punching into it and pulling it out, it's like he's like struggling, and he's like a muscular guy, like he's like struggling to yank it out.
It reminded me of like the consistency of like the Dick's Sporting Goods like dummy.
Yes,
that's what I thought it was.
Yeah. And they also insert a silly sound every time Zero strikes the target. I noticed they do like a weird like sword cutting sound. It's bizarre. Craig, I wanted to ask you, as the last weapons we're going to cover on today's show, what are the Sai? Were these a weapon that was actually used? Are they practical? Did the Yakuza use them? What'd you find?
Well, like a lot of stuff, I could not see Yakuza using Sai. If you Google that, you will find the Deadliest Warrior wiki.
They're over a foot long. They're like a foot and a half long. Like, can you imagine like walking around with that tucked in your like belt? Like,
did you say they used a ballistics dummy on the ice pick? They used that, right?
They did, yeah.
One of the only non-ballistic weapons.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But they're really versatile. That was the main thing I saw in how people would describe the Sai over and over. You could use them for stabbing, obviously, blocking. You could turn them around onto your forearm and
were they used by people?
Yeah, they were used by people. Weapon, martial arts. They were used by the police at one point. And you could disarm an attacker by probably
the Japanese police, or
I believe so. Yeah.
So it's essentially like a baton.
Well, I mean, sort of. I mean, you can't really trap a weapon with a baton. I guess you could smack it out of someone's hands. The Sai, a little more elegant. They're not necessarily in the nunchuck camp where they're all flash, even though they are pretty flashy. But like, if you have like Sai versus a katana, like, it doesn't. There's not really an advantage to having the Sai. So it's still kind of a weird weapon. Did the Yakuza use it? Maybe. Why not?
Yeah.
So that's how most of these weapons are. So
Dr. Dorian ends up giving the edge to the Sai, stating that it's just a better weapon.
It's a longer ice pick. It's like
the ice pick gets more kills in the sim.
Wow.
Not to jump too far ahead, but like I would definitely give the edge to the Sai. Like, it's not something I would normally pick up, obviously, but like if it's like you can have two big versions or one smaller version, like what would you rather have? And it's like, give me the Sai, I guess. Like,
Can I choose neither?
right. Give me the baseball bat.
Can I just choose like my fists and then I'll just pick up the Tommy gun again?
Also, the pointlessness of these weapons when we have a matchup where there are grenades, machine guns, and pistols.
I like how most episodes have like 4 weapons too. They did extra weapons on this for no reason. They didn't need.
I think it's because they like that formula of long, mid, short, and special, and then they added the explosives category. And they should learn that for modern matchups, just replace the melee category. They never do that. They never get rid of the melee. But it's like, just get rid of the melee weapon and put a grenade in there. Because like, how much ammo are these guys going in with? Like, at what, you know what I mean? Like, if you have a machine gun, at what point are you pulling out the ice pick? You're pulling it out when you're out of ammo.
That's like an Agent 47 hitman.
Yeah.
Like, you snuck up on the guy and you're trying to be quiet to not alert the other ones, and
But if you've already been unloading SMGs on each other, there is no stealth. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, I guess that guy's a bystander. No, what's he doing? So I guess I'd agree with the edge there to the Sai. Before we get into results, I did want to remark, right before he runs the tests, Max says that he's written all the custom modules necessary.
I've entered all of the data from the tests and written all of the custom modules necessary to run this fight in the simulator. So let's fire it up.
Custom modules, it's just a meme. I love it. He's always, it's like, what is that? Max is like, I'm writing custom modules for this fight. I've written all that are necessary.
It's like your mom would hear that and be like, can you pause the custom modules, Max?
dinner's done. Pause your modules.
And I wanted to remark that the final battle we see, the reenactments, they're always funny, but this one is particularly hilarious. It features 2 bystanders who both get wasted at the beginning of the fight, and it ends with the Mafia guy lighting a cigar.
It also features tons of fake mustaches on both sides for no reason.
Yeah. I think this is a pretty cool reenactment, though. It's really action-packed.
It's really funny. And I also want to mention, fun bit of DW trivia, this is the first squad matchup we see, and it is before the squad counter on the bottom of the screen, so you can see how many people are left. I believe it is this fight and the Green Beret Spetsnaz next week don't have people counters, so you never quite know how many are left on each team.
It doesn't matter.
Right. And then they eventually start doing that for all the modern matchups going forward.
Because when you're a kid, you think like, oh, this is a video recording of the sim.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's a party that really thinks,
So to get into the results, Mafia ends up winning 586 kills to the Yakuza's 414. On my template, I forgot to write Yakuza, and Knight is still written there. So apparently the Knight Sten gun got 359 killed.
If only.
So this matchup really came down to the SMGs. The Tommy gun had 499 kills, almost half of the kills in the entire battle. And the Sten gun had 359. So I'm going to add that real quick on my computer. 499 plus 359 is 858. So 85.8% of the kills in this matchup just came between these two guns. So all that time we wasted talking about ceramic grenades and shotguns versus pistols, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. And I did want to remark another thing about the results that I have a grievance relievance over. Pissed me off. It's not the last time this happens in the show, by the way. The P38 pistol gets 10 kills in the sim. And this is why I think the sim has to be real and just sucks. Because no one would write this in their right mind. P38 gets 10 kills, which is the same amount of kills as the Sai, and one more kill than the Nunchuck. Bat gets 23 kills, and the Ice Pick gets 24. How the hell does the Ice Pick and the Bat get more kills than the pistol?
And the Molotov only gets 2?
I just don't. It's just, so people
they can't be faked.
People say the sim is like fake and they make this shit up, but it's like, okay, I get it. Everything else on the show is fake. Who wrote that then? Who was like, let's really throw him off and give the pistol like 10 kills? It's like, were they not paying attention when they made that number up? It just seems like you would give.
Make it more even. Don't give the submachine guns 1,000,000 kills.
Yeah,
but
also don't give the pistol less kills than the baseball bat. Like, if you were going into a fight, what would you rather have, guys? A handgun or a bat?
Yeah.
Like, I have a theory that the submachine guns got every kill in the sim, and they're like, all right, we'll take like 150 kills and divvy them out to various things. And then we'll keep the Thompson. We'll do one under half, you know.
And so the theses on this episode, I think it's Max that says it. He goes, the efficiency, simplicity, and brutality of the Mafia weaponry edged it out over the Yakuza technique. So that was really a theme of the episode, is Mafia's brutality versus Yakuza's like technique and precision, right?
Sort of similar to the Viking Samurai.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very similar to the Viking Samurai, except the other way around is the result. I think that any kind of theses in this is completely bunk, because all the weapons just come from, all the kills come from like the automatic weapons. And so it's like, okay, if the Yakuza had the Tommy gun and the Mafia had the Sten, wouldn't the Yakuza have won?
But
right?
did the Yakuza even have the Sten? They don't explain it. Like,
So,
I think this is just a bad episode.
Listen, I think in theory, like when they were pitching this episode, this wouldn't be a bad idea. But then in practicality, you think about, okay, well, there's not really set kits for these warriors. They may not even be warriors. Who like, well, the Mafia's got to have the Tommy gun, and we can give them like a ice pick. But the Yakuza can have a katana. No, we already did that. How about a stent? Like the more they thought it out, like it just.
I guess I would remark. One of my last statements on the last show was how I loved Pirate vs. Knight because Deadliest Warrior really shines as a concept, even though they kind of dropped the ball in the episode.
No.
One thing I don't like about this episode, well, I just was talking about like guns versus armor. I think if they had tested it, the results would have been the same.
Yeah, guns are better.
Right. Yeah, I would say so too. I would. Yeah. Give me the choice between having the shotgun and wearing the plate armor. I'd be like, give me that blunderbuss. But Pirate Knight aside, I think this episode showcases probably Deadliest Warrior as its weakest. Like, the veil of pseudoscience they put over the fact that this is just something for your entertainment, right? This is just something where we want to shoot, stab, and blow up ballistics dummies and pig carcasses so you can go, yeah, you know, which is a part of the show. It does make it entertaining. It does make it exciting. But the veil that they put over that entertainment thing of like, here's some pseudoscience about who would actually win is so thin in this episode. Like, I think it totally undermines the show as a concept, because it's like, let's test out all these weapons. Let's talk about precision versus brutality, simple versus like martial weapons, right? Something like an ice pick going up against something like a Sai. completely negated by the fact that almost all the kills are just accumulated by the automatic weapons, which they would be, right? I mean, realistically, they're almost all accumulated by the automatic weapons. Theoretically, you could put anybody in this matchup and just give them this like set, and that would be who'd win, you know?
I want to correct what I said. I said this is a bad episode, and that's not fair. This is a good episode in theory. It's a bad setup.
Yeah.
Is what I want to correct. They would almost need to like revamp the system where like each side gets 1,000 warriors and then they divide 200 people get each of the weapons or something.
Yeah.
They would have to come up with some new theory if they didn't want the SMGs.
The rules aren't clear.
Yeah, the rules are not clear with Modern Warriors. We bitched about this at the beginning, but it's true. Like, okay, let me walk you through my mind right now. Spartan has a javelin, a spear, and a short sword, right? So when the match starts, your computer game Spartan throws the javelin, and he throws it the number of times either that he has ammo or until the distance is closed. Once he gets to a medium range, he pulls out a spear and the ninja pulls out the Kasarigama. They go at it. Anybody that lives through that stage moves on to the next stage where the Spartan pulls out a sword and the ninja pulls out a ninjato. You see how that plays out. Is that a perfect simulation of how combat would actually go? No. But I can see a rudimentary sim doing it that way, and it makes sense. This does not make sense. You need a primary weapon, a secondary weapon, and an explosive. Like, that is what a modern matchup needs to be. All of these guys are all of them coming in with Tommy guns? Is one guy have a shotgun? Does one guy have a baseball bat?
Like, have an ice pick.
Because how many times does that guy get murked before he's even able to close the distance? Like, who's carrying what? It's not made clear. The rules of the sim aren't made clear. And I don't know if that's because the sim is fake or if that's because they just want to hide how basic the sim is.
#fake sim in the comments.
Listen, not if, but when we get Max Geiger on the show.
Yeah.
First question, is the sim real?
Yeah.
Second question, can you explain to me how the sim works with Modern Warriors like I'm a baby?
Yes.
Pretend I'm a little kid. Explain what these stats mean.
Yeah.
Explain to me the custom modules.
I'm bringing this up now because it only gets worse with the next episode. Because we get into multiple firearms, like snipers, assault weapons, and like shotguns and pistols. And it's like, you wonder how a ballistic knife gets a single kill in a sim where people are bringing rifles, snipers, shotguns, grenades, and pistols. Like, that's something to argue about in the next episode. But this kind of showcases a weakness that's going to come up in these modern matchups. Like, who's carrying what? There is no long range, calling the Thompson the long range and the shotgun the mid range makes no sense, because you can use a Thompson at its max range all the way up to point blank. You know what I mean? So it's like, are you just running out of ammo, or are you forcing these guys in the program when they close a certain feat to switch out the Thompson with like a baseball bat?
Yeah. This discussion will probably be 30 plus minutes on the next episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to listen to the next episode in your car so you can buckle up for the ride you're about to go on.
We're planning some special stuff for next week's episode. It's definitely the most anticipated.
Yes.
I'm surprised we talked about this episode for this long, but really this was just the last thing we had to do to get over to
Green Beret versus
Spetsnaz.
Next week, our next episode.
Should we say it? I mean, if anyone's made it this far into this episode, they could deserve to hear what might happen. It's speculation.
I'm just going to say Green Beret versus Spetsnaz is the most controversial episode of Deadliest Warrior, period. That's just online, right? And in and amongst our friends group, it has been a huge topic of conversation for way too long. We're going to have 2 guests next week. You've already met Mike. He's beaming back from Cairo Station again to give his thoughts. a lot of us here are veterans in the military, so they're going to be bringing their perspectives, and all of us here except Craig are gun guys. So we're going to be bitching and moaning about all of that stuff.
And we might have a format change for the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
We'll see. It's in the works.
Fingers crossed. I would consider this our mid-season finale.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to take a break or anything, but it's just such a big change, and I'm so excited for this next one.
So, guys, subscribe to the channel. We're bringing more of this content, and we're going to work on some new stuff here soon, starting next week also. Hit subscribe, hit the notification, leave a like on the video if you like it. Please do. We are currently, if you search Deadliest Warrior with no cookies on YouTube, the 5th video that pulls up.
Fuck yeah.
So keep those likes rolling in. I got to get to number 1 above all these chumps out here.
We got a lot of stuff coming too. We have a lot of stuff being thrown out right now. A lot of ideas coming together. We're gonna have some good content rolling out here soon.
All I want to do is beat that AMV of the guy filming his TV with his phone of Viking versus a samurai that has like 1 million views.
So guys, leave a comment too. Just to say hi if you'd like to. We see some of you out there in the comments section, and it's so thrilling to know that people who aren't us or our like friends are watching this. It's really cool.
Seriously, thank you if you've made it this far. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Check out Green Dice Games, too.
Leave a comment if you're pissed off about this episode, too. Leave a comment if you have a question. Harass Max. No, I'm kidding. Don't harass Max Geiger on Twitter. We will get him eventually, people. But, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week for our most anticipated episode, Green Beret versus Spetsnaz.
See you there.